Hello, and welcome to the long-awaited PicoNav deep dive video. In this video, we'll be discussing some of the core features of the PicoNav, as well as giving some context and insight on the design and the decisions that were made for this device. There will also be some additional information for those who stick around until the end, and this video is going to be a little bit different compared to some of my other videos, in that we'll be following a script this time as we review the core aspects and mechanics of the device. The video will also be divided into chapters for ease of viewing, and while you can skip around to the parts that interest you the most, I really do urge everyone to listen to the history and philosophy section that we'll begin with for some context and fundamental frameworks and the concessions that I've made when designing the PicoNav. I also want to state that while the hardware is relatively close to final, the software is definitely not final, and everything is subject to change and evolve over time. In fact, the software will be changing before the official release, and it's not even fully complete now with what I'm showing you. But I hope it will serve as a way to introduce you to the PicoNav. So, with that out of the way, we've got a lot to cover, and I know this is going to be a long one. So, get some snacks, get comfy, and let's get started. So before we talk about the device itself, I have to offer context as to how I approach this project to set some expectations. When I start a new project, it's often to fulfill various goals that I set upon from the beginning, and the PicoNav actually started as a phone application because I had missed programming and I felt like I wasn't getting the experience that I had personally been looking for in a virtual pet. It was somewhere around that time when I had also felt that I could improve on my process as a manufacturer, so before long I had switched over to creating a physical device. The PicoNav at its core aimed to solve three major goals from day one. One, it had to create a new gameplay experience that I was looking for. And yes, we'll get into that in a bit. Two, it had to streamline the manufacturing process. My previous product in the Vital Pet was a relative success, but as those who watch the stream knows, they're an arduous process to build, and I actively hate assembling them. But more on that shortly. And finally, three, to test the waters of open sourcing my software. I had some pretty negative experiences with sharing my designs and people stealing my work in the past, but I really love the idea of the community iterating and improving a product that everyone's actively invested in. So I wanted to give that another shot. But with all that said, why is this important? Because with these goals in mind, they actively shaped how the PicoNav was built from the ground up. I knew immediately that I never wanted to glue, sand, and screw in another several hundred units of a product by hand ever again. So when designing the device, I made sure to create something solid that could be manufactured precisely, but also assembled quickly while still remaining cost effective. I also at the time wanted to hone and master my resin printing skills because while I was competent at resin printing, I didn't feel like I had the same level of creative knowledge and freedom as I did with FDM 3D printing. This is why the PicoNav is a textured resin shell with a snap fit design. It can be assembled in a matter of seconds, and when the parts are ready, including the board, all you have to do is pop them in place. Knowing that I also wanted to open source the software, and considering that my fundamental skill set in electrical engineering is very limited to say the least, which is something I'll be working on in the future, I also wanted to choose a board that had everything I need with little to no soldering, but could also be found at a relatively economical cost, and then base the design around that. After testing out a couple of other offerings and experimenting with some other boards like the Raspberry Pi Pico, hence the name, I ended up going with the LilyGo ESP32 TTGO T-Display board, and I know, quite the name. But this board has a screen, it's got USB-C charging, a lithium-ion battery connector, a microcontroller that's pretty reasonably well documented in the ESP32, and it's got two buttons. I would have preferred three, but two is workable, that's fine, we can go with that. I then based the design off of this board, and that's how we ended up with the design that you see today. Now, choosing this board also led to some concessions. There is no speakers, for starters, and I know that's going to rub some people the wrong way. There's also no accelerometer, there's no vibration motor, so I had to take these things into consideration very early on in development. Now, I know the lack of a speaker is going to bother some people, but I felt like that was one compromise that I realistically could take with all of the other offerings that this board did have on there. And on top of that, I have included a notification RGB LED inside the device. And I'm actually still experimenting with a speaker. So while I don't want to promise that a speaker is going to be there, I think there have been some accommodations around it, around that. Hopefully, that makes sense. Some a little bit of a disclaimer as well. I've never really been the type to use a speaker, so I do acknowledge my own personal bias there. Some of the other specs about the PicoNav that people may be wondering. The device is 56 by 30 millimeters in length and width, and it features a 1-inch TFT display with an acrylic screen similar to what you would find on some old school VPETs. It is not a glass screen, which does mean that yes, this thing can scuff and scratch, as you can see here. This has been my personal screen that I've been using for the last 4-ish months or so. It also features an 800 milliamp hour battery that can last anywhere from 12 to 33 hours depending on the use case and whether or not the LED has been running all day without being addressed. This is very subject to change as we begin some real world testing and the software reaches its more usable and completed state, but it should comfortably get you through the entire day at least. The size of the device and the screen, while still being very small, is also incredibly legible at a glance compared to some of the other devices like, say, the Vital Bracelet. You'll notice that the screen is actually bigger while keeping a smaller profile. And for comparison's sakes, here's the PicoNav next to a VitalPet shell. And here it is next to a DMX shell. Also, here it is next to a trading card. And finally, here it is next to a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con. The front plate is also removable with a small screwdriver or knife for you to customize with different colors. And while I'm not open sourcing the hardware, I am going to eventually release the file for the front plate for you to print your own, or you can pick up a couple of other different colors on my website after launch. The buttons are also clicky, but my microphone has noise suppression enabled, so here's some unedited footage from my phone. And finally, there's an optional wrist strap included in the box, but it will not be installed. So you can use your own wrist strap or add cell phone charms or whatever. So the core experience of the PicoNav is a little different from other VPETs in that this is a game that focuses on bite-sized battles and collecting gear rather than evolution. The caretaking aspect is also present, but it has less of an emphasis than some other devices as well. And while the experience will change over time as new features get added, I do want to note that the gameplay loop may not be for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. This is just the experience that I've been looking to create, and I really love the idea of like a pocket-sized, turn-based Pokemon-style battle that happens in between meetings at the office or something. So, with that said, let's finally boot the device up. Booting up the PicoNav can be done by pressing the A button, where you'll be greeted with the logo screen, and then eventually you'll see your Pico just kind of waddling around the screen. If this is the first time you're booting up the PicoNav, you'll also be greeted with a small welcome message and a prompt to pick a starter build as well as name your Pico. But since this is a demo more about the features and less of a tutorial, we won't really be going through all that. Instead, we'll go ahead and press the B button and show the status screen, where here we can see 3 major gauges that we'll be working with: the food, stamina, and mood gauge, as well as your Pico's name on the top over here. I'm not sure why, but my Discord really latched on to the name Dave when we were first naming these Picos, so say hi to Dave, I guess. So, food should be relatively straightforward and self-explanatory. That's your Pico's hunger meter. It'll slowly drain over time throughout the day, and you'll need to feed it to keep the little guy from starving. Keeping the food meter above 25% also will passively regenerate your Pico's health over time, and subsequently dropping the meter to 0 will actively drain its health and decrease its mood, which we'll talk about in a bit. The notification LED will also begin pulsing orange, as you can see here, and a little status emote will be above his head whenever we're at or below 25%. You'll also see it in the menu that the color of the meter will be a little bit different as well, using color 2. The PicoNav itself doesn't necessarily care about care mistakes. You can't really kill your Pico like you can in other VPETs, but you can knock it out, which comes with its own set of drawbacks that we'll cover as we go along. So, long story short, keep your guy fed, there won't be any problems. Alright, so next up is the stamina meter. This is your Pico's overall energy levels and what's used as a cost to enter dungeons to progress the game and to earn loot. Every time you venture into a dungeon, it'll cost you some stamina, and you'll regain this by sleeping or by using items. But just like us humans, Picos also lose stamina slowly over time as the day progresses. at a pretty passive rate though, but keep an eye out for that. So, similar to when your Pico is hungry, the notification LED will glow purple when it's tired, and you'll see some sleepy bubble emotes over its head. Finally, we've got the mood meter. And this meter is a little different than the other two, as it directly affects your Pico's attack and defense stats based on the mood. Picos don't actually love the act of venturing into dungeons and walking all that much. They more so just like the fighting and the loot. So the longer you venture, the lower the mood will drop. And once you hit certain thresholds, as denoted by the little dots over here, your attack and defense will get buffed or debuffed. And as the day goes on, you may notice that fights are going to grow a little bit tougher. Mood can be increased simply by just not being in a dungeon, but it'll increase at a slower rate than if you were to put them asleep. So there's going to be this kind of mini game of meter management. Do you venture into the dungeon and worsen your Pico's mood and subsequently make its attack and defense drop? Or do you take a break and reset their mood to fight a tougher dungeon later in the day with better odds? Or do you put them asleep and slowly regain mood but also regain stamina to do more dungeons tomorrow? We'll tweak the values as well as the game goes by, but the goals are going to be to really consider your options and determine what time is going to be right for farming, what time is going to be right for progression, and hopefully things will kind of make sense based on your Pico's mood and where you are at the moment. One final note as well, getting knocked out in battle drastically lowers your Pico's mood, as well as some other drawbacks that we'll talk about soon. So you don't really want to go around losing battles all day long. On the second page of the status screen, you could also see your HP in greater detail than you could on the main menu. You could also see your EXP meter to level up. And then finally, you'll see these 3 slots over here for gems. Gems are rare and expensive items that boost your Pika's attack, defense, and speed by a fixed amount. When you pick your starter build, you'll also be given a gem of that corresponding type, and you can purchase more at a very high rate in the future in the shop. At the moment, gems provide a 10% boost in their corresponding stat, and you can mix and match them as you see fit. So you could have 3 gems of defense to give yourself 130% defense. You can give yourself 1 of each, as this Pico has here currently. Or you can do something like a mix set of 120% attack and 110% speed. It's also worth noting that getting knocked out in battles will also cause you to lose one of your gems at random, so you really need to do your best to try not to get KO'd. Now that we've covered the basic statuses of the PicoNav, we can navigate around the rest of the menu before we look into what a battle is like. By pressing the A button, you can cycle through other menus, and by pressing and holding the A button, you'll always return back to the main menu. You can also press and hold both buttons at the same time to enable Do Not Disturb mode, which prevents any LED and possibly sound notifications in the future from going off. So if I were to press and hold here, you'll see the little icon and my LEDs are off. If I were to press and hold again, it's now back on. This is incredibly useful if you're ever in an important meeting or you don't want people to see a giant glowing RGB toy coming out of your pocket. So with all that, let's go ahead and start with the inventory menu. This menu is pretty straightforward as it shows us the consumable items that we've collected. Here is also where we can do things like feed our Picos, alter our next dungeon encounter, or give ourselves a temporary buff. Note that the items are limited and that you have to earn your items, including food, in dungeons or purchase them with credits in the shop. Don't worry though, as long as you're playing, you should have plenty of food stocked up, and if not, there's even a dedicated food farming venture map if you really need it. So, with all that said, I think it's about time we finally feed Dave, so let's give him some food. And now you'll notice that he's happy, there's no LED. If we press the status button, we'll see that our food meter is now filled up. We could feed him again if we really wanted to, but let's not worry about it for now. All right, so next up, we've got the deck menu. And surprise, it's a card game, sort of. So during battles, you'll have a choice of up to 8 different abilities that you can equip from your deck. You also get 3 decks that you can equip, and you can swap to them at any time by pressing and holding the B button, like so. Pressing the B button on a specific deck will let you edit your specific abilities as well. But let's actually go back and re-equip deck 1 and edit that one, because that's actually the one I want to be using right now. So if we press and hold the A button, it'll take us back a level. Press and hold this to re-equip, and then we'll go inside the deck. So in here, if at any point in time when you're looking at these abilities, if you're unsure what they do, you can actually press and hold the B button for a tooltip. And this tooltip actually shows up on any instance where there is a card or a counter if you're ever confused or need a reminder as to what something does. So here we can see that this thing places a water counter on an enemy and reduces speed. That's actually not what it does. Uh, but for the sake of the tooltip, that's what it did until I changed it last week. So here, you'll get your small little Mega Man Battle Network style blurb where you can see an explanation of what the ability does, the total damage of the ability, or the base power rather. You'll see a little icon, of course, and then here you can see how many copies of that ability are equipped in your deck to a maximum of 2. Now, let's actually go and replace our Fortify here with something like Air Slash. If I click on this, you'll be greeted with a menu where you can go through and look at all of the other cards that you have available in your collection. Similarly, you can press and hold to see what something does in case you need a reminder. But we'll actually go over to the next page here, and then we'll go find Air Slash and equip it. So now, just like that, we've got Air Slash, and let's go and get out of here. So we'll press and hold the A button, press and hold A button again, and we're back. So we're going to come back to the venture mode, but I do want to briefly touch up on some of the other menus first. The shop menu is currently under construction, but it's a shop. It's a persistent location where you can use the credits that you earn in battles to acquire items. Pretty straightforward, but as I stated earlier, this is also the only place where you can purchase gems. And the intent is to make currency both valuable and finite, but not so finite that you never want to spend any of it. So expect some balance changes early on. We do want to get that perfect. Next up on the list is going to be the wardrobe. So here you'll see a menu that's quite similar to the deck menu where we have 3 different wardrobes that we can equip and swap at will. Now, outfits on the PicoNav are purely cosmetic, so there's no outright benefit of wearing one outfit over another. The wardrobes themselves consist of a headpiece and a body piece, and you can mix and match them whenever you like. So just like the menu in the deck menu, navigation is identical to what you would expect in the wardrobe menu. In fact, let's just go ahead and give him a little wizard hat. There are no tool tips because you don't need to know what a wizard hat does. It just looks cool. Um, so pretty straightforward. If I wanted to equip this, again, I can press and hold the B button here and go back, and now we've got little wizard Dave. Um, so that one, pretty easy peasy. Also, I do want to note that a lot of people have asked about some of the cosmetics with the Pico. Not every Pico happens to have cat ears and dual blades. I just happen to really like that aesthetic. But as you can see here, you'll notice that there are different visuals that you can choose from, and there's different like top pieces and whatnot. So in a future video, we'll actually go over what some of the capabilities are in regards to making your own sprites and submitting sprites for fan contests and things like that. So stay tuned. All right, so next up is the sleep menu. This one's pretty straightforward too, as you're basically just putting Dave to sleep. As long as you're not venturing into a dungeon, you can actually sleep your Pico whenever you want. There are no restrictions or bedtimes that you have to adhere to. But again, you should consider whether or not your Pico can remain awake and idle to rapidly increase its mood versus putting them to sleep and gaining less mood per hour, but also recovering some stamina. One small other detail that I wanted to show as well is there are certain things that are restricted, and you can tell by the off color here, such as your inventory and venturing while asleep, because obviously you can't utilize some of those aspects. So let's go ahead and just wake Dave up. Okay, so now we can talk about the core feature of the PicoNav, which is the venture mode. This is a mode where you'll send off your little Pico into idle dungeons before going into a battle. During the beta, the initial launch of the PicoNav, the main venture mode will feature 300 total levels to complete, and will serve as a primary onboarding experience for players. Once the main venture mode is complete, there will be a deep dungeon mode, where your existing items, credits, abilities, and gems are set aside in a new game plus of sorts. And you try to complete as many stages as you can before getting KO'd, as you acquire random abilities and items, and your money becomes more important than ever. You'll also be able to maintain your full wardrobe collection, and when you finish the deep dungeon mode, your normal inventory will return to you. This mode will release shortly after the full launch, once all of the base set of abilities have been added and finalized and rebalanced, because I know it's going to be a mess at launch. But going back to the venture menu here, you can see a main stage number and a sub-stage number. with different reward chances on the left. Each stage will have a chance to drop a new ability, headgear, and body gear item, with each substage having an easier time getting one of the items and harder times getting some of the other items. Upon completion of all 3 substages, you'll be able to move to the next level until you complete level 100. Each dungeon takes 15 minutes of real-world idle time and will cost you 5 stamina as shown down below over here, unless you've completed the level already, such as these here, well, they'll take 2 stamina and only 5 minutes to go through. The stages that we have not completed are denoted over here by the little dark icon diamond thingy. So first, you want to choose the stage you want, and then you can pick the substage. So let's go ahead and, for sake of ease, let's go ahead and just choose stage 1-1. Please note that the EXP tables and reward tables are still under development, so for the purposes of the demo, there will be no final rewards. Also, note that this does not say 5 or 15 minutes, but rather 10 seconds for the purposes of this demo. However, once complete, we'll notice here that our Pico is ready and we have a nice flashing rainbow LED light. And once we are to hit either button, we will begin the battle. So let's go ahead and push a button and begin our battle. When the battle starts, we'll be greeted with another Pico walking up where we'll see our name versus their name, and then 3 out of our 8 different abilities that we've chosen will be shuffled and displayed at random. So if you need a reminder again, you can press and hold down the B button for a tooltip. And from here, the battles play out like a simplified version of the Pokemon video games and Magic the Gathering, just like a hint, where you and the opponent both select an ability to use and they play out at the same time, where the faster player goes first. You can also place a singular counter on yourself, the opponent, or the arena for additional effects that can be used for combos, buffs, and debuffs. Certain abilities can also remove or even replace counters, so there's an added layer of depth without being too overbearing on such a small screen. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and begin. So we're just going to go ahead and place this on the opponent and deal some damage. Again, if you forget what this does or you don't know what the opponent's card does, you can press and hold even before the damage is dealt. So here you can see I'm faster and it goes off, and here they're placing Fireball on me. So the opponent's using Fireball. If I don't know what that is, I can press and hold this, and then here it shows that it places a fire counter on the opponent, and it has a base power of 70. So here, I'll take the hit. And then you'll notice here, I'm burned. So I took an additional damage, and if I wanted to see what the heck does this burn counter do, or this fire counter, I can click on that and it tells me, okay, I'm gonna lose an eighth of my max HP every turn. All right, so here we can finish this out and try to knock out our opponent. The damage calculations for all of the Pokemon nerds out there is actually very similar to Pokemon battles. This guy's about to kill me. This is also not scripted, so I was really hoping I didn't get hit with like a critical hit or something. This game does have a 5% chance to land a critical hit. Um, and as you can see here, this is a level 1 battle, so think of this as if you were to play a Pokemon video game and battle with 2 level 1 Pokemon. The damage scaling is quite high, and as the levels increase, the power of your moves will also increase. But unlike a game like Pokemon, where you can't just get something like Ember and then immediately get something better like Flamethrower or Fire Blast, all of the abilities in the PicoNav are meant to be done in such a way where everything is going to be in the conversation. So battles start off relatively simple. There are some easy combos like using Fireball to place that fire counter like you just saw. There are other cards like Flare that consume a fire counter on the opponent and then deal an additional 3 times damage. So it's a very easy 1-2 combo to get you started and to understand the mechanics of the game. But as things progress, you might find more abstract cards with more niche use cases that will force a different kind of conversation when deck building in order to situationally create even more damage output. And conversely, the mechanics are also going to be a little bit more involved. You will start seeing enemies interacting more with the arena. You'll start to see them interact more with the types of counters that they place. So that'll force you to change and evolve your strategy as the game evolves and progresses, and as you as a player um, adapt and as your Pico levels up. So I'm hoping this is going to be enough for people to, really experiment with and try new combinations and strategies. And I know for a fact that there's going to be a lot of broken things because balancing games are hard. So ideally, the goal is that every ability should remain in the conversation and that nothing is strictly worse than another ability, but also for the battles to ideally stay between 5 and 10 turns or lasting about 30 seconds to a minute at most, keeping that philosophy of a bite-sized battle. A couple of other things to note, actually, once I finish out of this screen here. Again, normally you would get a reward, but we don't really have rewards in this demo build. But notice that my health has remained the same. You do not regenerate health at the end of a battle, so maintaining your health is going to be incredibly important, or using something like healing items, or coming up with defensive strategies, or one-shot builds, or things like that are going to be incredibly important as you try to stay healthy and go through more dungeons. So managing all of this is going to be vital to your success. Now that we've seen some of the core gameplay elements of the PicoNav, I wanted to quickly mention some of the other settings inside of the options menu. So first off, there is a pause menu. For those who are wondering, you can pause and resume the game at your own convenience, and pausing the game truly does pause it. So whatever dungeon that you are venturing through or whatever health status your Pico is frozen until you resume gameplay. There's also a backlight and an LED option, so you can change the brightness of your LED or even disable it entirely. Similar story for things like the main screen's backlight. We're going to go ahead and leave this to medium as it were before. There's a couple of other settings as well. You can power the device off entirely. This isn't a true power off because, again, this is based off of the ESP32, the TTGO display board. There is no true shut-off switch, but there is a deep sleep that will basically keep this thing operational for honestly almost a month at this point. So it's close enough to a power off, and then you can actually just power it back on again by hitting the A button once it is off. There's a couple of other settings in here as well once I get back to the menu. So we've got the option to factory reset the device, should we choose, if we wanted to clear everything. Of course, we don't really want to do that, but you can if you want to. And then you can also see the version and build number for the particular build that you're running. Um, it's worth noting that during the beta test, there will be an updated build with a couple of additional settings, namely the backup and the restore options, which are going to be used in conjunction with the PicoNav update tool, aka the PNUT. PNUT is a tool that'll be available for all to quickly and easily perform updates and modifications to your PicoNav. It'll have all the packages necessary to build and compile the changes to the device, and during the beta test and full launch, there will be an option in the tool to download the latest build directly from my GitHub. There will also be a way to save and restore your data as a file in case you want to maintain that data locally or create a fun challenge scenario for people to share. The PNUT can also be used to change the four main colors of the screen using hexadecimals in the RGB 565 format. Uh, Sorry in advance, the formatting for this is a little weird. So unfortunately, I couldn't make a color wheel or anything for easy mapping, but there are online sites that we can use for easy color codes, and I'll be sure to provide all of that later. Overall, the PNUT is a simple tool used to make updating the PicoNav quick and easy so that the device can continue to evolve. All right, we've covered a lot about this device, and I'm sure many of you are wondering what happens next. Well, for starters, there are still some core aspects of the game that need to be coded, not to mention a list of abilities and gear that I need to add in, but at least that's the fun and the easy part. There are also some parts that still need to be ordered, because while most of the parts are ready, I still need to place a large bulk order of batteries and boards from China, and that does take a good amount of time. We've also got to update the website, build our user manual and the wiki page, and then feature test the device. But if you've made it this far in the video, I'd like to share with you my application form to become a beta tester for the PicoNav. Now, this is a true beta test in that I'm hoping for honest feedback, bug reports, communications, and quality assurance testing. This is an entirely new product made from the ground up, and I'm really looking for users with various backgrounds and experience levels who can communicate with myself and other testers to help me try to create the best possible experience for everybody. Please, please do not sign up if you're just looking to play with this device and not offer any useful feedback. We can save that for the official launch since that's going to happen shortly after in Q1 of 2024. But users who sign up for this will be expected to purchase the hardware at full retail cost, as the units are near identical to the production models and software updates are going to be delivered to all users for free. And during this beta test, we'll also be carefully monitoring production times, build qualities, user engagement, and the most important question of all, are the users having fun? There will be more videos about this device in the near future. Maybe we'll do a Q&A video for some of the questions that you guys may have, but there will be an official trailer at a later date alongside the full release too after the beta test with some more updates, so please stay tuned. Also, I rarely say this as well, but please feel free to share this with anyone that you may think would be interested. I know this is a long video and it's probably a bit much for some other people until I get the official, 1 or 2 minute trailer video out, but I'm incredibly proud of what I have and I really just want to share this with everybody. So, if you made it this far, thank you so much. If you're interested in signing up for the beta, please feel free to fill out my application. Don't be offended if you don't get chosen. Again, this is for real user testing. Things may break, things may go as unexpected. We may have to push the release back. This is a true test, and I want to make sure that people who sign up for this understand that. Um, I've probably talked everyone's ear off. Feel free to leave me a comment. Give me your honest thoughts and feedback. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Is this something that you're looking for? Is this something that you really don't care at all about? How do you feel about speakers? All these different things. Please let me know. Thank you so very much for watching, and I will talk to you all later.